Good morning, everybody. It is May 26th, and this is another episode, I suppose, of This Day in History. We have some interesting birthdays. We have some another South American independence. We have notable figures who have passed away on this day. So let's get into it, shall we? So first, let's do the birthdays, right? So our birthdays start in 1895. Her name is Dorothea Lange. Dorothea Lange was a photographer during the Great Depression, and she was known for taking photo portraits of destitute American families during the Great Depression. She really captured the heart-gripping sense of despair that was prevalent during that time period. I do remember my grandparents telling me about the Great Depression, how they lived through it. My grandfather was born in 1927, so the stock market crash of 1928 is what led to the Great Depression. So he was really young when it started. And my grandmother was born in 1935, so she was kind of at the tail end of the Depression. But I mean, the lingering effects of the Depression were still there, literally right up until the war started in late 1941. My grandmother said that she can remember that Christmas was more celebrated as it's a great time to be alive despite our circumstances. We have our health, we have our family, and that's what we should be grateful for. She remembered one time that they got a lot of hand-me-down Christmas presents, and my great aunt Alina, who was exactly 2 years younger than my grandmother, she had my grandmother's doll was given to her for Christmas. Grandma thought that was unfair, but I mean that was life during the Great Depression. So Dorothea Lange was born on this day in 1895. In 1907, his name was Marion Morrison. You might know him better as the Duke or John Wayne. In 1907, John Wayne was born, and he would have a 50-year career as an American actor. He was in a lot of great westerns. He was in the Green Berets, which I remember watching as a kid. He did a lot of movies over his career, and it's said that his style of acting and how he portrayed himself in his westerns, especially, and how he carried himself, how he walked, how he talked, was largely due to the impression left upon him from when he met Wyatt Earp. He actually met Wyatt Earp, and so when he, in his movies, I tell you what, Pilgrim, apparently a lot of that was impressions of that's how Wyatt Earp was when he related to people, how he talked, how he walked. Apparently those mannerisms that he adopted for the big screen came from his meeting Wyatt Earp and his interactions with Wyatt Earp, and that's how Wyatt Earp acted that's how he behaved in real life. So we kind of have a sense of I mean, if that's what it said, is that said to have adopted his acting style based on his meeting of Wyatt Earp. So if that's the case, then how we see John Wayne act on the big screen is a reflection of how Wyatt Earp really was in person. So I mean, it's kind of cool. John Wayne got into acting in the 20s. Wyatt would pass away in 1929. So he was, he got to meet a legend of yesteryear, as it were. I guess it'd kind of be like, me meeting someone from the turn of the century for us, in the 1900s. So and getting the experience of talking to someone who was alive during, say, the Titanic or World War I, or something like that. So it was he got to meet an American icon, and that shaped his career. In 1926, we have a jazz musician, an African-American musician, a trumpeter, Miles Davis. His birthday is today. He was born on this day in 1926. In 1949, British politician Jeremy Corbyn was born. On this day in 1971, Matt Stone. Now, that name may sound familiar to you. Well, if you're a South Park fan, Matt Stone was one half of the dynamic duo that is the creative force behind South Park. Matt Stone and Trey Parker. They brought you all those wonderful characters of South Park. Anyway, Matt Stone's birthday is today. He was born on this day in 1971. He is an American actor. He's a screenwriter. He's a producer. So, yeah, his birthday is today. Also, American musician Lauryn Hill, her birthday is today, and she is 49. I didn't realize that she and I were roughly the same age. She was born on this day in 1975. So, we also have, on this day in 1951, Sally Ride. She was an American astronaut. She was born on this day. Unfortunately, she passed away at the age of 61. But she was an American astronaut. So let's get into the good stuff that is this day in history. The year is 1521. The person is Martin Luther. Yes, that's Martin Luther of the Lutheran Church. That's who the Lutherans were founded from. He was the founder of the Lutheran Church. Martin Luther was a born of German descent. He is noted for his contributions to Christianity, in the sense that he's the guy who had the audacity to, well, first of all, his father wanted him to become a lawyer, and his father sent him to, be educated. So Martin Luther was a very educated man. Martin Luther felt the calling of God and chose to go to seminary instead of law school, where he became an ordained priest. Halloween is, we all know the holiday of Halloween, but did you know that it's the day of Reformation? And Reformation is the day designated for how Protestant Christianity got its start. And what happened there was, it was Martin Luther. He drafted out a 95-point thesis telling the Catholic Church what they were doing wrong and how they were sinning and that they needed to change their ways. He tacked this 95-point thesis on the front door of the Catholic diocese there in Germany. Now, mind you, the the Catholic Church did not take too kindly to him calling them out. And they branded him a heretic. They branded him an enemy of Christendom, as it were. They actually had petitioned King Leopold of Germania to release him into their custody so that they could excommunicate him and then basically burn him at the stake for being a heretic. To his credit, King Leopold basically told them that he's done nothing to me. He is one of my citizens. He is protected under the authority of my crown, and you will not touch him. So it is on this day in 1521 that the Edict of Worms would declare him a heretic. They would ban his writings. They would call for his arrest, and so that they could execute him. And it was King Leopold of Germania that really saved Martin Luther from being executed by the Catholic Church for heresy, which is something that they did back then. If you didn't conform with their way, if they suspected you of witchcraft or whatever, they would basically burn you at the stake, and they'd excommunicate you, so that they would declare that you are separated from the church, i.e. you're separated from God, and therefore when you die you are banished to hell. This is why I could never be Catholic, because they've taken the role of God's judgment out of his hands and put it in their own, and woe unto them. So, it doesn't matter if you're a Lutheran, or if you're an evangelical, or if you're a non-denominational. You could be an evangelist, you could be Lutheran, you could be Baptist, you could be Calvinist, you could be whatever flavor of Christianity you are. If you are anything of a Protestant flavor, you owe your thanks to Martin Luther for causing the Reformation and causing that split from the Catholic Church, because the core word there in Protestant is protest. It was a protest against the Catholic Church for their wrongdoing, and that is what led to true religious freedom in recognizing the Word of God and all that. So that's what happened on this day in 1521, is that he was declared a heretic. Not that it mattered to him, because he was still going to do God's work regardless. So that is that. 1703, we have, it's really a footnote in history, really. It's a British diarist, meaning someone who's made famous by the publishing of his diaries. He was a naval administrator as well. His name was Samuel Pepys. He would die on this day at the age of, let me find my notes. He died at the age of 70. And I don't really know much about him other than what I just read, is that he was, his diaries were published, and so that's how he was made famous. 1868. So on this day in 1868, the other day we talked about the impeachment trial of Andrew Johnson. Andrew Johnson was our 17th president. He took over as president when Abraham Lincoln was assassinated. He was basically the impeachment trial was really brought about because he openly opposed who were then referred to as the radical Republicans. He openly opposed their policies of wanting to make the South pay for, they wanted to make them pay heavily for daring to secede from the Union, and that's not what Lincoln wanted. Lincoln wanted our country to heal. He didn't want to continue that split divide, but the radical Republicans were really mad about, well, first of all, they were mad about the separation, the secession of those states, so they really wanted to stick it to them. They were also mad that it was a Southerner that murdered their president, and so it was guilt by association. Because you were Southerner, we want to make you pay. Andrew Johnson, being a Southerner himself, opposed that. He opposed the radical ideas, and so because they were threatened through veto and whatnot, they decided to try to get rid of him. And unfortunately for them, so the experience had a twofold effect, right? So realistically, they failed in getting rid of him. They failed in ousting him out of office. But where they got their victory was that it's on this day that he is acquitted. The impeachment trial is no more. He is acquitted, and he remains president for the rest of his term. But where they got their victory was that he was basically left powerless for the remainder of his term. He was nothing more than basically a puppet. He was a puppet government for the duration of the term. He couldn't get anything done. He couldn't get anything that he wanted passed because Congress, Senate, they blocked everything that he would have wanted, and so he was essentially a figurehead until they could get a new president in there. But that's what happened on this day in 1868. 1876, we have the Challenger expedition successfully conclude. And what that was is that it was an oceanography expedition that was hosted by the British Admiralty and the Royal Society. In 1897, on this day, Bram Stoker's Dracula would be published, and so the famous story of Dracula the vampire is made famous because of his story that he had published on this day in 1897. It's noted that he was Irish born, and if you've ever seen the movie, it's an excellent movie. The story of Dracula is one that's been told time and time again. It's a classic, Gothic monster story. So, yeah. Moving into the 20th century, in 1913, the Actors Equity Association, which is essentially a trade union, it would be formed on this day in 1913. 1927, again, the year that my grandfather was born, on this day, in 1927, Ford would halt production of the Model T. It would come to its successful conclusion, and then they would move on and branch out to other models of Ford. Fast forward to World War II. It's on this day in 1940 that the British they basically start their evacuation of British troops from Dunkirk. if you've ever seen the movies, A Bridge Too Far or the movie Dunkirk, it really illustrates what happened in Holland, and that was that Bernard Montgomery was a British tank commander, and this was kind of his operation. It was his baby. He had this notion of routing out the Germans from Holland and getting a foothold on Europe that way. It was before we ever made landfall on France for D-Day or going through Italy. It was kind of early on in the war, but it was a catastrophic failure. The Germans were dug in, and the general consensus is that the British had kind of really overextended themselves by going a bridge too far. That's what the consensus of that movie was about. Dunkirk really focused on the fact that the British had recognized that they were it was a lost cause, and they were going to lose a lot of men. A lot of men would have been killed or captured had they not got them out of there. And so they got them out of there. The British government had solicited the support of any maritime vessel that could help. So fishermen were, they were, taking their boats to Dunkirk to pick up soldiers and bring them back home. It was quite an interesting affair. They were successful in getting their troops evacuated out of there. The Germans had declared it a major victory on their part. They would be emboldened into thinking that Europe is ours and you can't touch us, you can't move us, nice try, pal. It wouldn't be until June 6th, 1944 that we would successfully put troops on the beaches of Normandy, which is in France, and then once we got a foothold on France, it was the beginning of the end for the Germans in that war. We fast forward to 1968? That can't be right. No. If my chicken scratch is right, it's 1968. What would happen is South American country, Guyana, would gain its independence from... Okay, so it was once a Dutch colony, then later a British colony, but it would gain its independence on this day in... I guess it is 1968. I'd have to double check that. But they gained their independence. Last, certainly not least, because we will always do this until we stop doing it. The last item of the day is it's 2008. Film director, producer Sidney Pollack would pass away at the age of 73. And that was on this day in 2000. What did I say? On this day in 2008. So there you have it. That is your day in history. Some good stuff there. Have a blessed day, and do come back and join me tomorrow for This Day in History for May 27th. Have a good one. Take care. Be blessed, and we'll talk to you soon. All right? Bye.